I think one of the hardest things for people when it comes to exercise intolerance after a concussion is the fact that the line in the sand moves every day, and sometimes it
Yep.
moves around every hour. And
Yep.
so a lot of people feel very frustrated where maybe I could do something for a certain number of minutes on Tuesday and all of a sudden Wednesday I can't. And so how do you work with people or give them tools to kind of figure out that, like I said, that constantly moving line in the sand that can make it so hard to know, what to do when?
The biggest thing that I do is review all their data to look for aggregate trends over time. And I'll tell them, like, I don't really give two hoots like what you do on a daily basis. The only thing that I'm really monitoring you on is, did you show up and try something? Because I understand it gets very easy and demoralizing to be like, oh man, Wednesday was amazing. Thursday sucked ass. Friday sucked too. Saturday's going to suck. It's like, well, maybe not. Saturday might be really good, right? You may have overdid it on that day. Who knows what's going on? So looking at the aggregate trends. Oh, all right. We'll use Bob again, right? Bob, when you started, like 5 minutes of exercise on the rower at a heart rate of 110 was the max you could do. Now, on your best day, I'm not saying you can do this every day yet. You were able to do 15 minutes, right, over the last 2 months. So that's a huge improvement, even though it won't feel like it when you're there. And then so showing them that like their output is actually physically better. And the second part I'll look for then is it's just like training. So in training, you have an absolute PR. On my absolute best day, I snorted too much caffeine and did my pre-workout and all this stuff. And hey, I got this number. Cool. Does that mean you're going to hit that number every day now? Oh, God, no, you're not going to. But it's possible. Like you showed your nervous system that if the stars and moons align, I was able to hit this number on this day. Cool. Now, I also look at what is your floor? What is a lift or endurance performance? You could go out like half asleep, had 3 beers the night before on 4 hours of sleep, and for sure you could absolutely do, and you could probably go back and do it the next day. Great. So now we have your peak. Now we have your floor. It's the same thing if you have exercise intolerance, right? Okay, your worst day is maybe it's only 2 minutes now. Great. When you first started, you couldn't do anything. Maybe your best day is 15 minutes. Cool. Right. So over time, I want that gap to kind of close down a little bit, and I want the floor to go up so that the minimum thing you can do is something you could execute every day. I'm more interested in the floor than I am the absolute peak. And so getting them to understand that the only way you'll figure that out is you have to show up every day and at least try something. So here's our progression of where to try. Here's, okay, does a movement test okay? Was it heart rate? Was it thing? And if you just keep showing up and going in a direction you can, like you're going to get better. And so the question I have them ask is not, what am I able to do today, but what can I do today? Right? And at what cost? Like for psychological reasons, you may feel like you need to do an absolute kind of quote max test, knowing you're going to pay for it for 2 days. I'm actually fine with patients doing that if that's their decision and they're okay with that decision and that's what they needed to feel like an athlete again. Cool. Am I going to have them do that every week? Oh, hell no. Right? But sometimes just purely on the psychological side, they want to see that peak because that's what they're equating their performance to. As long as they're not going to injure themselves, cool. As long I'm probably going to make them brutally aware of the cost that they paid to do for it, in terms of awareness. But again, I think they have to decide. And so the biggest thing is just this is like training, just like the violent consistency of trying something every day. And I'm more interested in, did you show up to try something? Even if you walked out of the gym that day. I've had people call like, hey man, like I did the 3 progressions you said, and I literally had to walk out of the gym because nothing tested well. Nothing was good. Great. That's awesome. Like, what do you mean that's awesome? This sucked. I hate this. Anything you probably would have done that day probably would have set you backwards for who knows how long. So that was the best you could do on that day. If this pattern happens, we'll look at it and we'll change something. But you still give yourself the win and the pat on the back for doing the thing. Because honestly, I've lost multiple clients because they get so frustrated. They're like, it's been like, 4 weeks and I can only do 5 minutes on the rower now. I used to do 20 minutes. And yeah, when you started, you did nothing, right? You couldn't do anything. right? So 5 minutes doesn't feel like it's progression, but you're actually still going forward. And I don't know what you've seen, but what I've seen is it's super nonlinear. Like the
Mm.
variability is very high. Some days are amazing, some days are absolutely freaking horrible. But over time, the variability should get less, your floor should go up, and your peak performance should go up. And the difference between your floor and your peak should get less. So on a day by day basis, you're becoming, air quotes, a lot more functional. But the hardest part is when you have a bad day, it feels like all your days are bad days, right? It's hard to remember all the progress you've made when you're like, man, I just drove 20 minutes to the gym, I did all this stuff, and I have to walk out now, right? So a
Mhm.
lot of it is just getting them over, some of those peaks and valleys just to keep going. Because the beautiful thing about physiology, both from physiology and neurology, is that everything is more plastic than what I think we realize. Like the one thing I've learned over the years is that it's hard to understand how freak athletes are until you've been around them. And it's on the other end, it's always amazing how much plasticity there is in the human organism given the right stimulus. Like how much you can change concussions, you can change outputs of people who, sometimes can't even freaking stand up, right? And, riding their bikes across Nebraska and shit later. So it's amazing to me just how much plasticity and how much the organism can change given the right amount of inputs.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel that too in terms of people's frustration when they say, "Gosh, I've been working on this for 4 weeks and I feel like I'm not making progress." And it's frustrating because you do see some people who they just seem like that they are constantly on an upward trajectory and they get better, 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 and then they go on
Yep.
with their lives, and that's what you want for everybody. And then there's some people where for whatever reason it just is a much slower progression, and that can be so frustrating when that's you. But I have seen people on those slow progressions where I have one patient and she could walk down her driveway and back, and it was a pretty long driveway. And it was just like over time, she was able to work up to walking a mile just back and
Mm-hmm.
forth up and down the driveway. And when she would get dizzy, we gave her some rescue exercises to like bring the dizziness and the vertigo back down so that she could keep walking. And it's just like, and then eventually she could try it without using trekking poles, and because her balance was getting better. And so it's like, yes, it was a slow progression, but that just makes those wins like that much more magical when you can see like you are getting better, and then it becomes really exciting to be able to look back and say, well, here's where you were 6 months ago, here's where you are now, like your system's improving. And then it's also frustrating, like with all the wildfire smoke that we just had here in
Yeah.
Minnesota for the last 72 hours. All of my patients were coming in saying, my headaches have been worse, my migraines have been
Yep.
worse, I'm tired, I'm not sleeping well. And I'm like, yeah, it's because we've been breathing in toxic wildfire smoke for the last 72 hours. Of course, it's affecting your nervous system. Your oxygenation is completely different. And so those setbacks are always frustrating too. But a lot of my patients, they hadn't made that connection between the air quality and their symptoms. But then when I pointed out, they're like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense now that you say that.
Yeah. It's my little nuclear approach is when they get really frustrated. And sometimes I'm like, okay, so what are you gonna do different? Like I'm fine if you fire me and you go work with another professional. That's totally cool. Like as long as you tell me you're gonna do something to move forward. Because the one thing I can absolutely guarantee you is that if you don't do anything, you're only gonna get worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you've seen this, but I've never seen a case sort of spontaneously resolve itself. But
Right.
I've always seen when people stop doing things, like it just gets worse, unfortunately. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when it comes to exercise, obviously, people, they train, they do something, and then they might feel more tired afterwards.
yep.
But, over time, like you said, there's still improvement. And I mean, there have been times when I have just been super duper sick. And when I'm no longer contagious, I go back to the CrossFit gym and I start doing my workouts, and I can tell my heart rate is higher, and I have shortness of breath, and my endurance is low, and it sucks, and I have to take it easy. but I stick with it. And because I stick with it, it's like over time, it just, I slowly get back to where I was before I got sick. And, I banged my head and probably gave myself another concussion a couple months ago. And
Oh no.
yeah. And so for 10 days, I had really bad light sensitivity, headaches, nausea, dizziness. I had some blurry vision that day. And, it's like I went to the gym and we were doing like, oblique movements with a kettlebell. And all of a sudden it's like I went to the right and I'm like, okay. And then I go to the left and all of a sudden I come back up and it's like, whoa,
No.
And so, little things like that, it just made me realize, okay, like maybe I need to just be a little more cautious. But I did all my things, right? I did my PEMF, I did my red light therapy, I did my eye exercises, I worked on some head eye vestibular stuff. And, within 10 days, I was like, okay, my light sensitivity's back down, my headaches are gone, I'm not nauseous, like we can start revving things up again. But yeah, the system is amazing in terms of how neuroplasticity works. And I think that the exercise piece of it has always been a huge part of my ability to recover, because I've had
Oh yeah.
10 concussions, and I
Oh
really
geez.
do feel that because I'm addicted to exercise and I do so many different types of exercise, that all has such a therapeutic value to my recovery and allows me to maybe recover faster because of all these different types of movements, and just the fact that my vestibular system has to handle doing so many different things.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's faster recovery from just being in a trained state, period.